Clumsy little fool, Victoria Ashford hissed, her perfectly manicured hand still extended from where she'd deliberately knocked the tray. Do you have any idea how much my dress costs? More than you'll make in a year serving drinks to your betters. Emma's face burned as 200 of Manhattan's elite watched her humiliation unfold. The catering company had sent her to this gala as a last-minute replacement, and now she was on her knees in a borrowed uniform that didn't quite fit, picking up shards of crystal while Victoria's friends laughed behind their hands. I'm so sorry, Emma whispered, even though they both knew Victoria had caused the accident on purpose. She'd seen the calculation in the woman's eyes right before impact. Sorry doesn't clean Valentino, does it? Victoria's voice carried across the sudden silence. Someone get this girl out of here before she ruins anything else. Emma's hands shook as she reached for another piece of glass. This job was supposed to help her cover her mother's medical bills. The experimental treatment wasn't covered by insurance, and Emma had been working 3 jobs for 6 months just to keep up with the costs. She couldn't afford to lose this gig, even if it meant swallowing her pride in front of all these people who looked at her like she was invisible. That's enough! The voice cut through the ballroom like a blade, deep, commanding, and absolutely cold. Emma's head snapped up, and she found herself looking at a man who seemed to draw all the light in the room toward him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Roman coins. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to see straight through to her bones. His tuxedo probably cost more than her car, fitted perfectly to broad shoulders, and a lean, powerful frame. But it was his presence that made Emma's breath catch. An aura of barely contained danger that had nothing to do with his expensive clothes, and everything to do with the way he moved, like a predator in a room full of prey. He walked toward her with purposeful strides, and the crowd parted without being asked. Dante Moretti, someone whispered nearby, and Emma heard the fear underneath the name. Victoria's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that looked like nervousness. Mr. Moretti, I was just handling a small situation with the staff. By throwing glasses at her? His tone was conversational, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. He stopped directly in front of Emma, and she realized she was still kneeling on the floor, surrounded by broken crystal. Get up. It wasn't a suggestion. Emma stood on shaking legs, acutely aware that her right palm was bleeding from where she'd cut it on the glass. The man, Dante Moretti, was even more imposing up close. His eyes were cold and assessing, taking in her disheveled appearance, her bleeding hand, and the tears she was fighting to hold back. Then he did something that made Emma's heart stop. He reached out, took her injured hand in his, and examined the cut with an expression that had gone absolutely glacial. This is my wife, he said, his voice carrying across the ballroom with absolute authority. And you just assaulted her. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's mind reeled. Wife? She'd never seen this man before in her life, but his hand was warm around hers, and there was something in his eyes, a sharp intelligence and a warning that she should play along. Victoria's face had gone pale. Your wife? But I didn't. She's wearing a catering uniform. Because she's generous with her time and wanted to help a friend's struggling business. Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. And you assaulted her. In front of 200 witnesses. It was an accident, Victoria stammered, and Emma almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I didn't mean to. You deliberately knocked a tray toward her. I watched you do it. Dante's thumb brushed across Emma's wrist in what might have been a comforting gesture if his attention weren't fixed on Victoria like a hawk eyeing a mouse. Now, my wife is bleeding. She's been publicly humiliated. And you think calling it an accident makes this acceptable? Emma found her voice, though it came out shakier than she wanted. I should probably get this cleaned up. Shh, darling. Dante's other hand came up to cup her face, turning her toward him with surprising gentleness. Up close, she could see flecks of silver in those devastating blue eyes. Let me handle this. There was steel underneath the endearment, but also something that made Emma's stomach flip. Protection. Not the toxic, possessive kind, but the real thing, a wall of danger standing between her and the world. He looked back at Victoria, and his expression went arctic. You're going to apologize to my wife, sincerely, and then you're going to write a check to whatever charity she chooses for $50,000. Consider it a donation in honor of not having your husband's commercial real estate portfolio mysteriously run into permitting problems across 3 states. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. You can't. I can. 2 words, absolute and final. Your husband owes money to people I know. A lot of money. And those people listen when I make suggestions about who deserves a little extra pressure and who deserves a grace period. What do you think I'll suggest after watching you assault someone who couldn't fight back? Emma felt like she'd stepped into an alternate dimension. This stranger was threatening one of Manhattan's most prominent socialites on her behalf, claiming she was his wife, and doing it all with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly how much power he wielded. Victoria looked at Emma, and for the first time, there was genuine fear in her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was wrong of me, and I'll make the donation. Whatever she wants. Emma? Dante's attention shifted to her, and the coldness in his expression warmed just slightly. What charity should Mrs. Ashford support with her generous contribution? Her mind spun. The American Cancer Society, she heard herself say, for research funding. Something flickered in Dante's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or approval. You heard her? I expect confirmation of the donation by Monday morning. He turned to address the crowd, most of whom were staring with undisguised fascination. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to take care of my wife's injury. The gala was lovely, Senator Richardson. Thank you for the invitation. And then, before Emma could process what was happening, Dante Moretti wrapped his arm around her waist and guided her through the crowd toward the exit. People melted out of their way. Some looked terrified, others looked hungry for gossip. But no one tried to stop them. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as they passed through the ballroom doors into a marble hallway lined with artwork that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. She should say something. She should pull away and demand to know what was happening. But Dante's hand was warm and steady at her waist, and she could still feel the phantom sensation of his thumb against her cheek where he'd touched her face. They turned down a quieter corridor, and Dante finally released her, putting a careful foot of space between them. We need to talk. Somewhere private. Who are you? Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. Why did you tell everyone I'm your wife? Because I need you to be. His eyes met hers, and there was nothing cold about his gaze now. Instead, she saw calculation, urgency, and something that might have been respect. For tonight, maybe longer, depending on how things go. That doesn't make any sense. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that she was alone in a deserted hallway with a man that people clearly feared. A man who'd just blackmailed someone on her behalf without blinking. I don't know you. I don't know anything about you except that Victoria looked terrified when she heard your name. Good instincts. Dante's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I'll explain everything, but not here. There's a private room down this hall. Come with me. I should get back to work. The catering company will fire me if I just disappear. I already paid them $10,000 for the evening. You're off duty. He studied her face like he was reading a book written in a language only he understood. Please, Emma. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need your help. And judging by the way your hands were shaking when you were picking up that glass, you need mine too. It was the please that did it. Such a simple word, but it came from a man who clearly didn't use it often. Emma looked at her bleeding palm, thought about the medical bills piling up on her kitchen table, and made a decision that would change her life forever. Lead the way. The private room turned out to be a luxurious study with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Dante closed the door behind them and immediately went to a side cabinet, pulling out a first aid kit that looked surprisingly well stocked for a hotel conference room. Sit, he said, gesturing to a leather couch. When Emma hesitated, he added more softly, Please. She sat. Dante knelt in front of her. Actually knelt, this powerful, dangerous man getting on his knees to tend to her injury, and carefully took her hand in his. His touch was gentle as he cleaned the cut with antiseptic wipes. This might sting. It did, but Emma barely noticed. She was too focused on the way his dark head was bent over her palm, the way his fingers moved with practiced efficiency. You've done this before. More times than I'd like to count. He applied ointment and began wrapping her hand with gauze. I'm going to tell you the truth because you deserve it, and because I think you're smart enough to handle it. My name is Dante Moretti. My family has business interests in construction, real estate, and import-export operations across the eastern seaboard. That's the polite version, Emma said quietly. What's the real one? His eyes flicked up to meet hers, and she saw approval in their depths. The real one is that my family has been involved in organized crime for 4 generations. I took over operations 3 years ago when my father died, and I've been working to legitimize our businesses ever since. Moving money from the shadows into the light, cutting ties with the worst elements, building something that won't destroy my nephews when they're old enough to understand what their last name means. Emma should have been terrified. She should have pulled her hand away and run. But there was something about the weary honesty in his voice that kept her rooted in place. Why are you telling me this? Because there are people in my organization who don't like the changes I'm making. They want the old ways back. The violence, the drug trafficking, the protection rackets that bled neighborhoods dry. He finished bandaging her hand and sat back on his heels, still looking up at her. Their leader is a man named Vincent Caruso. He's been consolidating power, turning my own people against me. 3 days ago, I learned he's planning to have me killed at the Richardson Foundation Gala. This gala, Emma breathed. Tonight. Dante's jaw tightened. I came anyway because showing fear is the same as showing weakness, and weakness gets you killed in my world. But I needed an edge, something that would make Vincent hesitate, make him recalculate his plans. A wife. Understanding dawned cold and clear. If you have a wife, killing you becomes more complicated. There's a witness, someone who could testify, someone who makes it personal instead of just business. Exactly. He stood, offering her his hand to help her up. Emma took it, letting him pull her to her feet. They stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtly woodsy. I was supposed to bring someone tonight, a woman I've been seeing casually. She backed out at the last minute, said she had the flu, but I think Vincent got to her, made her realize it wasn't safe to be near me. So you saw me getting humiliated and thought I'd make a good substitute. No. His hand was still holding hers, warm and solid. I saw you on your knees being degraded by someone who should have known better, and I saw you holding your head high anyway. You were scared, but you weren't broken. You didn't cry. You didn't lash out. You just tried to keep your job and your dignity at the same time. His free hand came up to brush a strand of hair away from her face. I saw strength, and I thought, hoped, that strength might be willing to help me, just for tonight. Emma's breath caught. She should say no. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was... how much? The words came out before she could stop them. Dante's expression didn't change, but she saw respect flash in his eyes. Name your price. My mother has stage 4 cancer. She needs experimental treatment that costs $30,000 per round. Insurance won't cover it. Emma's voice steadied as she spoke, turning this terrifying situation into a negotiation she could understand. I need $60,000. Enough for 2 rounds of treatment. Done. No hesitation. I'll have it transferred to your account tonight. I want it in writing, a contract. Smart. He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly, and showed her the screen. It was an email to his lawyer with instructions to draw up an agreement. $60,000 to Emma Hartwell in exchange for her attendance at the gala as his wife and her discretion regarding the evening's events. He'll have it ready within the hour. Anything else? Emma thought about her mother's smile, about the hope that had been fading from her eyes with each failed treatment. She thought about the stack of overdue medical bills and the crushing weight of helplessness. And she thought about the way this dangerous, complicated man had knelt at her feet to bandage her hand. What exactly do you need me to do? Relief flickered across Dante's features. Stay by my side for the rest of the evening. Play the role of my devoted wife. Vincent will be watching, evaluating, trying to decide if killing me tonight is still worth the risk. He stepped closer, and Emma's pulse jumped. I need him to believe that you're real, that you matter to me, that touching me means going through you first. How do we make that believable? We just met. Leave that to me. His hand came up to cup her jaw, tilting her face toward his. The gesture was possessive, but careful, and Emma felt heat pool low in her stomach. I need you to trust me for the next few hours. Can you do that? She should say no. Every rational thought in her head screamed at her to walk away, to take the subway back to her tiny apartment, and forget this night ever happened. But Emma looked into Dante Moretti's eyes and saw something she recognized. Desperation wrapped in determination. A person fighting to protect something precious even when the odds were impossible. She'd been wearing that same expression in the mirror every morning for 6 months. Yes, she whispered, I can do that. The smile that crossed his face transformed him. For just a moment, the danger and the coldness fell away, and she saw the man underneath. Someone tired and lonely, and carrying far too much weight on his shoulders. Then let's go remind everyone that I'm not someone they want to cross. Dante opened a closet Emma hadn't noticed and pulled out a garment bag. Inside was a dress that made her breath catch, midnight blue silk that shimmered like water, with a neckline that would be elegant rather than revealing, and a skirt that would fall to her ankles. I had this brought in. My assistant is very efficient. He held it up. It should fit. We're close to the same height, and she's good at estimating. You planned this. Emma took the dress, feeling the weight of expensive fabric in her hands. You knew you'd need someone. I hoped I'd find someone. There's a difference. He gestured toward a door on the far side of the room. There's a bathroom through there. Take your time. When you're ready, we'll go back out together. Emma locked herself in the bathroom and leaned against the sink, her reflection staring back at her. Her brown eyes were wide with shock. Her light brown hair was falling out of its hasty ponytail, and she was holding a dress that cost more than 3 months of her rent. This was crazy. This was beyond crazy. But she thought about her mother's face when the doctor had delivered the news about the cancer spreading. She thought about the way her mom had held her hand and said, Don't you dare go into debt for me, sweetheart. I've lived a good life. Emma had promised she wouldn't, and then she'd immediately started taking on every job she could find, lying to her mother about where the money was coming from, watching herself disappear piece by piece under the weight of impossible choices. This was one night. A few hours of pretending to be someone she wasn't, in exchange for the chance to give her mother a real chance at survival. She could do this. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves in ways her catering uniform never had. Emma found makeup in a drawer, high-end brands she'd only ever seen in magazines, and did her best to repair the damage from her earlier humiliation. She took down her hair, letting it fall in waves around her shoulders, and studied her reflection. She looked like someone who belonged in that ballroom, someone who could stand beside a man like Dante Moretti and make people believe she was his wife. When she emerged, Dante was standing by the windows, his phone pressed to his ear. He turned at the sound of the door, and Emma watched his eyes widen slightly before his expression smoothed into something unreadable. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, and ended the call without waiting for a response. His gaze traveled slowly from her face, down to her feet, and back up, and Emma felt that look like a physical touch. You're beautiful. It wasn't a smooth line. It was said with the same matter-of-fact certainty he'd used when threatening Victoria Ashford, and somehow that made it more powerful. "Thank you." Emma smoothed her hands down the dress, nervous energy making her fidget. "I've never worn anything like this before." "Keep it." Dante crossed to her, and Emma's breath hitched as he pulled a jewelry box from his pocket. "One more thing." Inside was a ring, a stunning solitaire diamond set in platinum that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. It was the kind of ring that represented true love and forever promises, and Emma felt a pang in her chest as Dante took her left hand. "This was my grandmother's," he said quietly, sliding the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and Emma wondered if that was luck, or if his efficient assistant had somehow known her ring size. "She gave it to me before she died, and told me to make sure I gave it to someone worthy of wearing it." "I can't," Emma started to pull back. "This is too much. What if I lose it? What if something happens?" "It's insured." His thumb brushed over the ring, and his hand lingered on hers. "But more importantly, it belonged to the woman who taught me that power without honor is just cruelty. She'd like you." The way he said it, with absolute certainty, as if his dead grandmother could look down from heaven and judge Emma's character in an instant, made her throat tight. "How do you know?" "Because you're standing here even though you're terrified. Because you negotiated for your price instead of just taking what I offered. Because the first thing you thought of when you had power over Victoria Ashford was cancer research, not revenge." His hand squeezed hers gently. "Because you're exactly the kind of woman my nonna would have called una donna di coraggio. A woman of courage." Emma blinked back tears. "I'm not courageous. I'm desperate." "In my experience, those are often the same thing." Dante offered her his arm. "Ready?" No, she wasn't ready. She would never be ready for this. But Emma slipped her hand through his arm anyway, felt the solid strength of him beneath her fingers, and nodded. They walked back toward the ballroom together, and with every step, Emma felt herself transforming. The scared girl in the borrowed uniform fell away, replaced by someone who could stand tall and meet the stares of Manhattan's elite without flinching. When they reached the ballroom doors, Dante paused. "From this moment on, you're Emma Moretti. You've been my wife for 2 years. We met at a charity auction when you outbid me for a painting. I was annoyed. You were amused. I asked you to dinner so I could convince you to sell it to me. And I proposed before dessert arrived because I knew I'd never meet anyone like you again." It was such a specific story, told with such casual conviction that Emma almost believed it herself. "What happened to the painting?" A real smile crossed his face. "You donated it to a children's hospital and told me if I wanted to see it, I'd have to visit sick kids with you. I did. I've been visiting that hospital every month since." "You're good at this." Emma's voice was soft with something that might have been admiration, or might have been concern. She wasn't sure which. "I've had practice." The smile faded. "But Emma, this is the first time I've wanted any of it to be real." Before she could process that statement, he pushed open the doors, and they stepped back into the ballroom. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. Emma heard the whispers start like wind through trees. "That's her. That's Dante Moretti's wife. Did you see the dress? Did you see the ring? My God, she's wearing the Moretti diamond." Dante kept his hand at the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. And maybe he did, Emma thought. Maybe this was what real power looked like. Not Victoria's petty cruelty, or the senator's glad-handing, but this calm certainty that the world would bend around you because it had no other choice. They were halfway across the ballroom when a man stepped into their path. He was older than Dante, maybe late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and a face that had probably been handsome before something hard had settled behind his eyes. He wore an expensive suit, but unlike Dante, who wore his like a second skin, this man wore his like armor. "Dante!" The man's voice was smooth, urbane, and absolutely venomous. What a surprise to see you here. I heard you were under the weather. Vincent, Dante's tone could have frozen fire. I'm feeling much better, actually. Emma, this is Vincent Caruso. Vincent, my wife. Vincent's gaze cut to Emma, and she forced herself not to flinch under the assessment in his eyes. This was the man who wanted Dante dead. This was the man they were trying to fool. Your wife! Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. How wonderful! I hadn't heard you'd gotten married. We prefer to keep our private life private. Dante's hand moved on Emma's back, pulling her closer against his side in a gesture that looked possessive and protective at the same time. Not everyone needs to know our business. No, I suppose not. Vincent's attention lingered on Emma a moment too long, making her skin crawl. It's dangerous, though, isn't it? Bringing your wife into your world. So many things could happen to someone you care about. The threat was barely veiled. Emma felt Dante tense beside her, felt the violence coiled beneath his civilized exterior. This was the moment, she realized. This was when Vincent would decide whether killing Dante was worth the complications. And Emma knew with absolute certainty, that she had to do something to tip the scales. She laughed. It wasn't a nervous giggle or a forced sound. It was a genuine, warm laugh that made several people nearby turn to look. Oh, Vincent, was it? Emma patted his arm like he was a confused child. That's sweet that you're concerned, but I think you've got the wrong impression. I'm not some delicate flower Dante needs to protect. I chose this life. I chose him. She looked up at Dante, and what she saw in his eyes made her next words come easier. And anyone who thinks threatening me is a good way to get to my husband has fundamentally misunderstood what I'm capable of. The temperature in the immediate vicinity dropped 10 degrees. Vincent's smile vanished. Dante's hand tightened on her waist. Is that so? Vincent's voice had gone soft and deadly. Emma smiled, channeling every ounce of steel she'd developed while fighting insurance companies and hospital billing departments and her own crushing fear. I grew up with 3 brothers in South Boston, Mr. Caruso. My family didn't have money or connections or power. What we had was loyalty and the willingness to protect our own no matter what it cost. She leaned in slightly, keeping her voice conversational. So, yes, I understand the danger. I've always understood it. And I married Dante anyway, because some people are worth fighting for. Worth dying for, if it comes to that. She let the words hang in the air, watched Vincent's expression shift from predatory to calculating. Then Emma turned her face up to Dante, rose on her tiptoes, and kissed him. It was supposed to be for show, a performance to sell their story. But the moment her lips met his, something ignited between them that had nothing to do with pretense. Dante's hand came up to cup the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her hair, and he kissed her back with a hunger that stole her breath. The ballroom faded away. There was no Vincent, no threat, no pretense. There was only this, the heat of Dante's mouth on hers, the solid strength of his body, the way he held her like she was precious and powerful at the same time. When they finally broke apart, Emma was breathing hard, and Dante's eyes had gone nearly black with desire. Excuse us, Vincent. Dante's voice was rough. My wife and I have somewhere else to be. He didn't wait for a response. He simply swept Emma away through the crowd, moving fast enough that she had to hurry to keep up. They passed through doors, down hallways, until they reached another private room. This one darker, quieter, with heavy curtains blocking the city lights. Dante closed the door and leaned against it, his chest rising and falling rapidly. That was dangerous. I know. Emma touched her lips, still feeling the imprint of his kiss. But it worked. Did you see his face? He's not sure anymore. He's second-guessing whether killing you is worth the fallout. You called him by his first name. You touched him. You threatened him right to his face. Dante pushed off the door and crossed to her in 3 long strides. Do you have any idea how insane that was? You needed him to believe I'm real, that I matter, that I'm not someone he can easily intimidate or remove. Emma lifted her chin, refusing to back down even though her heart was racing. I did what needed to be done. You did more than that. Dante's hand came up to frame her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. You were magnificent. Terrifying and brilliant and absolutely magnificent. I was scared out of my mind. I know. That's what made it perfect. He leaned his forehead against hers, and Emma felt the tension thrumming through his body. He's going to leave me alone tonight. Maybe longer. You bought me time. Good. Emma's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat thunder beneath her palms. That's what you paid me for. Is it? Dante's voice had gone quiet, intense. Is that all this is to you? A transaction? Emma should say yes. She should keep this professional, maintain the boundaries that would protect her heart when this night inevitably ended. But she was tired of lying, tired of pretending she was stronger than she felt, tired of facing the world alone. No, she whispered. No. It stopped being just a transaction the moment you knelt on the floor to bandage my hand. Dante kissed her again, and this time there was no audience to perform for, no Vincent to fool. This kiss was just for them, deep and searching, and full of all the desperate loneliness they'd both been carrying. When they broke apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I need to tell you something. Okay? The woman who was supposed to come with me tonight, I was never actually seeing her. She was someone my assistant hired to play the role. He pulled back enough to meet Emma's eyes. I've been looking for a reason to clean up my life, to be worthy of someone real, for 3 years. I just hadn't found the right person yet. Emma's heart clenched. Dante, I'm not asking you for anything, he said quickly. I know this was supposed to be one night. I know you have your own life, your own problems. But Emma, you need to know that everything I said out there about meeting you, and knowing immediately, that wasn't part of the story. That was just true. She should be practical. She should take the money, go home, and forget this ever happened. But Emma had spent 6 months being practical, being careful, being the responsible daughter who never asked for help or admitted when she was drowning. Maybe it was time to be reckless instead. What if I don't want it to be just one night? The words came out small and terrified, but Emma forced herself to keep going. What if I want to see where this goes? Dante's eyes searched her face. My world is dangerous. Vincent isn't going to give up just because he's uncertain. He'll regroup, find another angle, keep coming at me. And if you're with me, you become a target. I've been living with danger for 6 months, Dante. Different kind, maybe, but just as real. Every time I see my mom, I don't know if it's the last time. Every medical bill feels like another nail in a coffin I'm trying to keep closed through sheer force of will. Emma's voice cracked. At least with you, I'd be facing the danger with someone who sees me. Really sees me, not just the tired girl in the catering uniform, or the desperate daughter, or the invisible person rich people look through. I see you. Dante cupped her face in both hands. I see your courage, and your strength, and the way you turned humiliation into dignity. I see the woman who threatened a Mafia underboss to protect a man she'd known for 2 hours. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. I see you, Emma Hartwell, and I don't want to let you go. Then don't. They crashed together like waves against rocks, all heat and desperation and the terrifying relief of not being alone anymore. Dante's hands were in her hair, Emma's were clutching his shoulders, and they kissed like they could pour all their fear and hope and desperate need into each other and somehow both come out whole. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. I want to do this right. Court you properly. Take you to dinner, meet your mother, make you believe that this is real. It is real. Emma's fingers traced the line of his jaw. It was real the moment you knelt down to bandage my hand. The moment you saw me being hurt and decided it was unacceptable. The moment you trusted me with the truth instead of just feeding me comfortable lies. I need you to understand what you're choosing. Dante's voice was steady, but his eyes were vulnerable. I'm trying to go legitimate, but it's going to take years to fully clean up my family's reputation. There will be threats. There will be danger. There will be nights when I come home with blood on my hands and can't tell you whose it is or why. And I need you to understand what you're choosing. Emma matched his tone. I have a mother with terminal cancer and medical debt that would make your accountant weep. I work 3 jobs and still can't make ends meet. I'm not glamorous or connected or anything like the women you probably usually date. I'm just perfect. Dante cut her off. You're perfect, and I don't care about medical debt or work schedules or any of it. I care about you. Emma felt tears spill over. I care about you too. How is that possible? We just met. Sometimes you just know. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. My grandmother always said that when you meet the right person, it's not about time, it's about recognition. Your soul knows theirs. And Emma, my soul recognized yours the moment I saw you on your knees refusing to break. A knock on the door made them both jump. Dante's hand went automatically to Emma's waist, pulling her behind him, protective even now. Boss? A male voice called from the hallway. We have a situation. Dante's expression went cold and hard. Stay here, he told Emma. Not a chance. She grabbed his hand. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. Partners. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Partners. He raised his voice. Come in, Marco. The door opened to reveal a tall man with close-cropped dark hair and the kind of build that suggested he spent a lot of time in the gym. He had a gun visible in a shoulder holster, and Emma forced herself not to react. Vincent just left the gala, took half his men with him. Marco's eyes flicked to Emma, assessing, then back to Dante. Word is he's calling a meeting, telling people you've gone soft, that the wife is a liability. Let him. Dante's hand found Emma's, lacing their fingers together. Let him call all the meetings he wants. We're not hiding anymore. Marco's eyebrows rose. Boss, with all respect, that's not the plan. I know. Dante's smile was sharp and dangerous. New plan. Vincent thinks Emma makes me weak. I'm going to show him exactly how wrong he is. Schedule a meeting with all the family heads. Tomorrow night. And make sure Vincent knows he's expected to attend. Dante. Emma squeezed his hand. What are you doing? Ending this. He turned to her, and his eyes were blazing with determination. I've been playing defense for 3 years, trying to change things quietly while keeping everyone happy. But Vincent's right about one thing. I have gone soft. I've been so worried about avoiding conflict that I've let cancers like him fester in my organization. So what's the new plan? I'm going to give the family a choice. Side with me and build something legitimate, something our children can be proud of, or side with Vincent and keep wallowing in the dirt. Dante's jaw set, and I'm going to make it very clear that anyone who chooses Vincent is choosing to be my enemy. Marco whistled low. That's going to start a war. No. Dante's smile was cold. That's going to end one. Vincent has been pushing for this confrontation for 3 years. I'm finally going to give it to him. Emma's heart pounded. This was dangerous. This was insane. This was exactly the kind of situation she should run from. Instead, she stepped forward and laid her hand on Dante's arm. Then we're going to need a strategy. Because if we're doing this, we're going to win. Both men stared at her. Marco looked shocked. Dante looked like he'd just fallen in love all over again. Dante's voice was soft. Partners, remember? Emma lifted her chin. I grew up in Southie. I know how neighborhood politics work, how loyalty is built and broken. Your world isn't that different. Just higher stakes and better suits. She turned to Marco. How many family heads are there? 7, Marco said slowly, clearly recalculating his opinion of her. Plus, Dante and Vincent makes 9 votes total. So we need 5 to have a majority. Emma's mind raced, falling into the same pattern she used when negotiating with insurance companies. Find the pressure points. Understand what people want. Give them a reason to choose your side. What do they want? Really want, underneath the money and the power? Dante's expression shifted from surprise to impressed. Safety for their families. Respect. A future where their kids don't end up dead or in prison. Then that's what we give them. Emma paced, thinking out loud. We show them that your way isn't weak. It's smart. That legitimate businesses mean legitimate protection. No more looking over your shoulder wondering if the FBI is coming. No more explaining to your kids why they can't tell anyone what Daddy does for work. They'll say I'm naive, Dante said, that you can't just walk away from this life. Then we find examples of people who did. Families that transitioned successfully. Show them the blueprint. Emma stopped pacing and faced him. And we make it clear that Vincent's way leads to only one place. Prison or death. The old way is dying, Dante. They have to know that. They're just scared of what comes next. Marco cleared his throat. Boss, she's right. Most of the heads are older now. They have grandkids. They're tired of the violence and the risk. Vincent appeals to them because he represents what they know, not because they actually want to go back to the old ways. So we give them a path forward. Dante pulled Emma against his side, and she felt the rightness of it, standing with him, planning strategy, facing the future together. And we show them that Emma isn't a liability. She's an asset. More than that, Emma said quietly, we show them she's family, and family protects family. Dante looked at her, and Emma saw the exact moment he made a decision. He turned to Marco. Set up the meeting. Tomorrow night at the warehouse on Pier 42. And Marco? Spread the word that Vincent was wrong. My wife doesn't make me weak. She makes me dangerous. Marco grinned, with pleasure. Boss. He left, closing the door behind him. Alone again, Emma let out a shaky breath. Did I just help you plan a mob confrontation? Yes. Dante pulled her close, tucking her against his chest. Having second thoughts? Emma thought about it, really thought about it. She was standing in a private room planning criminal strategy with a man she'd met 4 hours ago. She was wearing his dead grandmother's ring and his trust like they were the most natural things in the world. She should be terrified. She should be running. Instead, she felt more alive than she had in months. No second thoughts. She looked up at him. But I need to tell my mother. About tonight. About you. About all of it. Of course. Dante's hand came up to cup her face. When? Tomorrow morning, before the meeting. Emma's voice steadied. She needs to hear this from me, not from some news report if things go wrong. Things won't go wrong. You can't promise that. No, Dante admitted, but I can promise that whatever happens, I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, to give us a chance at the life we both deserve. Emma rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. Then let's go get it. They returned to the Gala long enough to make a final appearance. Dante's hand possessive at Emma's waist, Emma's head high, and the Moretti diamond catching the light. They danced, and Emma felt the weight of watching eyes as Dante held her close and whispered in her ear about the future he wanted to build with her. When they finally left, walking out into the cool New York night, Emma felt like she was leaving her old life behind. The scared girl who'd been on her knees picking up glass was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd looked danger in the face and chosen to stand her ground. Dante's driver pulled up in a sleek black car, and Emma slid into the back seat, Dante following close behind. As they drove through the city streets, his hand found hers, and they sat in comfortable silence watching the lights blur past. Emma? Dante's voice was quiet. Yeah? Thank you, for tonight, for trusting me, for... He paused, searching for words. For seeing me. Not the reputation, or the power, or the danger. Just me. Emma squeezed his hand. Right back at you. They drove to Emma's apartment in Queens, and she was acutely aware of how shabby her building must look compared to the world Dante lived in. But he didn't comment. Just walked her to her door like this was a normal date, and she hadn't just helped him navigate a potential assassination attempt. At her door, Emma turned to face him. Tomorrow morning, I'll talk to my mom. Then what? Then I send a car for you at 6. We'll have dinner, go over the plan, and head to the meeting together. Dante brushed a strand of hair back from her face. Together, Emma. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, she echoed, and sealed it with a kiss. That night, lying in her own bed, still wearing the midnight blue dress, Emma stared at the Moretti diamond on her finger and tried to process everything that had happened. She should take it off, keep it safe, treat it like the valuable artifact it was. Instead, she left it on and fell asleep with her hand against her heart, feeling the weight of the ring like a promise. Morning came too soon, but Emma was awake and ready when her mother shuffled into the kitchen. Margaret Hartwell looked tired. The cancer and the treatments had stolen her vitality, but her eyes were still sharp. You didn't come home until late, she said, settling into her chair. How was the catering gig? Mom, I need to tell you something. Emma sat across from her and took a deep breath. And I need you to let me finish before you react, okay? Her mother's expression shifted to concern. Emma, what happened? So Emma told her. Everything. The humiliation, the broken glass, Dante's intervention. She explained about the threat, about Vincent, about the choice she'd made to help a stranger who'd shown her kindness when she needed it most. And then he paid me, Emma said, pulling out her phone to show her mother the bank transfer notification. $60,000. Enough for 2 rounds of your treatment. Margaret stared at the screen, then at Emma, then at the ring still on Emma's finger. You married him. No, this was just, we were pretending. But even as she said it, Emma knew it wasn't true anymore. Hadn't been true since that second kiss. We started pretending. And now? Now I don't know what we are. But Mom, he sees me. He values me. He protected me when he didn't have to, and trusted me with secrets that could destroy him. Emma's voice cracked. And I'm going to stand by him tonight when he faces down the people who want him dead. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took Emma's hand, the one wearing the diamond. Your father would have liked him. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Her father had died 10 years ago, a construction worker who'd fallen from a scaffold trying to provide for his family. You think? I think he protected his wife, built something legitimate, and chose loyalty over profit. Yeah, baby girl. Your dad would have liked him a lot. Margaret squeezed her hand. Are you in love with him? Emma stopped, really considered it. I don't know if it's love yet, but it could be. It feels like it could be something real and lasting and worth fighting for. Then fight for it. Her mother's eyes were fierce despite her exhaustion. You've been fighting for me for months, Emma, drowning yourself in work and debt and fear. Maybe it's time you fought for something that brings you joy instead of just preventing pain. The tears spilled over. I'm scared, Mom. Good. That means you're human. Margaret pulled her daughter into a hug. But baby, I didn't raise you to run from things that scare you. I raised you to face them head on and come out stronger. At 6 o'clock that evening, Emma stood outside her building in the midnight blue dress from the night before, her mother's words echoing in her head. The sleek black car pulled up, and Dante stepped out, looking devastating in a dark suit that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. Ready? He asked, offering his hand. Emma took it, feeling the rightness of her fingers laced with his. Ready? The warehouse on Pier 42 was exactly what Emma had expected. Industrial, isolated, and just sketchy enough to make her nervous. But Dante's hand was warm in hers as they walked inside, and Marco and 2 other men flanked them like an honor guard. The 7 family heads were already there, seated around a long table like this was a corporate board meeting and not a gathering of criminals. Vincent sat at the far end, his expression smug and confident. "Gentlemen," Dante said, his voice carrying across the space, "thank you for coming. I know Vincent has been telling you that I've gone soft, that my marriage is a liability, that the changes I've been implementing are going to destroy what our family's built." "It's true," Vincent interjected. "You've lost your edge, Dante. You care more about looking legitimate than maintaining respect." "Respect?" Dante's laugh was cold. "You think respect comes from violence and intimidation? That's not respect, Vincent. That's fear. And fear is a terrible foundation for anything lasting." "This is our world," one of the older heads, Anthony DeLuca, said wearily. "We can't just walk away from it." "I'm not asking you to walk away," Dante said. "I'm asking you to evolve. To build something our children can inherit without shame. To turn our money and our power into legitimate enterprises that don't require us to look over our shoulders every day." "Weak," Vincent spat. "This is exactly what I've been saying. You're weak, Dante. And that girl—" He jerked his chin toward Emma. "She's made you weaker." Emma felt the attention of the room shift to her. This was the moment. This was when she could either prove Vincent right or show them all exactly how wrong he was. She stepped forward, releasing Dante's hand and walking toward the table with her head high. "My name is Emma Hartwell. Some of you probably think I'm just some girl Dante picked up to play house with, that I don't understand this world, or what's at stake." "You don't," Vincent said flatly. "You're right. I don't understand your world." Emma's voice was steady. "But I understand loyalty. I understand family. I understand what it means to fight for the people you love, even when the odds are impossible." She looked around the table, meeting each man's eyes. "I've spent the last 6 months fighting insurance companies and hospital administrators to keep my mother alive. I've worked 3 jobs, gone without sleep, done everything in my power to protect someone I love." She turned to Vincent. "You think that makes me weak? That love and loyalty are liabilities." Emma laughed, and it was sharp and bitter. "Love and loyalty are the only things that matter. Power without them is just cruelty. Money without them is just numbers. Respect without them is just fear wearing a fancy mask." "Pretty speech," Vincent said. "Doesn't change reality." "No, but reality is changing whether you like it or not." Emma gestured toward the windows, toward the city beyond. "The world is different now. Law enforcement is smarter. Technology makes secrets impossible. The old ways, your ways, Vincent, they don't work anymore. They just get people killed or imprisoned." "And Dante's way?" Anthony asked, and Emma heard genuine curiosity in his voice. "Dante's way gives you a future." Emma turned to face the table again. "He's offering you legitimate businesses, clean money, the ability to pass something on to your children that they can be proud of. Yes, it requires change. Yes, it means letting go of some things, but the alternative is watching this life destroy everything you've built." "She's manipulating you," Vincent said, but there was less confidence in his voice now. "Can't you see? She's playing on your fears." "She's telling the truth," Dante cut in. "And Vincent, that's what really scares you. Not that I've gone soft, but that I've found something worth being strong for." He moved to stand beside Emma, his hand finding hers again. "My wife doesn't make me weak. She makes me better. She reminds me why I'm doing this. Not for power or profit, but for the chance to build something that matters." Silence fell over the warehouse. Emma watched the family heads exchange glances, seeing the calculations happening behind their eyes. Finally, Anthony DeLuca stood. He was the oldest, the one who'd been in this life the longest. His word would carry weight. "I have 6 grandchildren," he said quietly. "Beautiful kids, smart, funny, full of potential. He looked at Dante. I don't want them in this life. I never did. But I didn't know how to give them another option. I'm offering that option, Dante said. Not just to you, Anthony, but to all of you. Help me build something legitimate, something lasting, something we can be proud to leave behind. And if we don't, Vincent's voice was venomous, if we choose to maintain tradition, then you're choosing to be my enemy. Dante's tone went ice cold. And I will remove every enemy from my organization with extreme prejudice. No more playing nice. No more trying to keep everyone happy. You're either with me or against me, and I promise you, you don't want to be against me. The threat hung in the air, and Emma saw Vincent's confidence crack. He'd wanted this confrontation, but he'd expected Dante to still be pulling his punches. Instead, Dante had drawn a line in the sand and dared anyone to cross it. I vote with Dante, Anthony said. He looked around the table. Our children deserve better than this life gave us. Dante's offering us a way to give it to them. One by one, the other family heads stood and voiced their support. Some looked relieved, others looked resigned, but all of them chose Dante. Vincent stood alone at the end of the table, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Yes, Dante said quietly. It is. You're out, Vincent. Out of the family. Out of the business, out of New York. I'll give you 48 hours to liquidate your assets and disappear. After that, you're fair game. You'll regret this, Vincent snarled. Both of you. The only thing I regret, Dante said, pulling Emma closer against his side, is not doing this sooner. Vincent stormed out, and Emma felt the tension in the room ease slightly. Anthony came around the table and offered his hand to Dante. You made the right choice, bringing her, he said, nodding toward Emma. She's got spine. The family needs people with spine. She's got more than that, Dante said softly. She's got heart. And she's teaching me how to have one again. The meeting dispersed, the family heads congratulating Dante on his marriage and his victory. Emma shook hands and accepted well wishes, feeling surreal about the whole thing. 12 hours ago, she'd been terrified. Now she was being welcomed into a Mafia family like she belonged there. Finally, they were alone again in the car, driving through the city as night settled over New York. Emma leaned against Dante, exhausted and exhilarated, and still processing everything that had happened. You were incredible, Dante murmured against her hair. The way you spoke to them, the way you challenged Vincent. Emma, you were absolutely incredible. I was terrified. I know. That's what made it so powerful. He tilted her face up to his. You stood there anyway. You fought for me, for us, even though you were scared. Partners, Emma reminded him. That's what we agreed on. Partners. Dante's thumb traced her lower lip. Emma, I know this is fast. I know we should probably take our time and date properly, and I love you. The words came out before Emma could stop them, but she didn't want to stop them. She'd spent 6 months being careful and practical and measured. She was done with that. I know it's insane. I know we barely know each other. But Dante, I love you. I love your strength and your vulnerability, and the way you knelt down to bandage my hand like it mattered. I love that you're trying to build something better, even though it would be easier to maintain the status quo. I love. He kissed her, deep and desperate and full of promise. When they broke apart, his eyes were shining. I love you, too, he whispered. I think I loved you from the moment I saw you on your knees refusing to break. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Emma Hartwell. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. You already did that. Emma cupped his face. The moment you chose me over fear. The moment you trusted me enough to stand beside you. The moment you saw me as a partner, instead of a liability. They kissed again as the car carried them through the city, and Emma felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. She wasn't the scared girl picking up broken glass anymore. She wasn't the desperate daughter drowning in medical bills and hopelessness. She was Emma Moretti, or she would be, once they made this official. She was a woman who'd looked danger in the face and laughed. She was loved by a man who valued her strength and her heart in equal measure. She was exactly who she'd always had the potential to be, just waiting for someone to see it. 3 months later, Emma stood in a small church in Queens, wearing a white dress that made her mother cry. Dante waited at the altar in his tuxedo, Marco standing as his best man, and Emma's 3 brothers walked her down the aisle with matching expressions of protectiveness and acceptance. Her mother sat in the front row, looking healthier than she had in months. The experimental treatment was working. The cancer wasn't gone, but it was retreating, and Margaret Hartwell was fighting back with everything she had. The Moretti diamond sparkled on Emma's left hand as she reached the altar and took Dante's hands in hers. The priest began speaking, but Emma barely heard the words. She was too focused on the man in front of her, the dangerous, complicated, wonderful man who'd seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up instead of stepping over her. "I love you," Dante mouthed, and Emma smiled. "I love you too," she mouthed back. They exchanged vows and rings, and when the priest finally said, "You may kiss your bride," Dante pulled Emma into his arms and kissed her like they were the only 2 people in the world. The reception was small and intimate, just family and close friends. Anthony DeLuca gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Emma's brothers threatened Dante with bodily harm if he ever hurt their sister, and Dante promised them he'd let them try. As the evening wound down, Dante pulled Emma onto the dance floor for a slow dance under twinkling lights. "Happy?" he asked, holding her close. Emma looked around at her mother laughing with Marco, at her brothers trading stories with the Moretti family, at the life they'd built together in just 3 months. Deliriously. "Good." Dante's hand tightened on her waist. "Because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way." "That's a long time." "Not long enough." He kissed her forehead. "Emma Moretti, you saved my life that night at the Gala. Not just from Vincent, but from becoming someone I didn't want to be. You reminded me what's worth fighting for." "Right back at you." Emma rose on her tiptoes to kiss him. "You saved me too. From drowning in fear and hopelessness, from thinking I had to face everything alone." They swayed together as the music played, 2 people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, and chosen to build something real from the pretense. Emma thought back to that night 3 months ago, kneeling on the ballroom floor, humiliated and hurting, with no idea that the most dangerous and wonderful man in the room was about to change her life forever. She'd been alone at the Gala, and then Dante Moretti had said, "Act like my wife for tonight. I'll explain later." He'd explained. She'd listened. And together they'd built something neither of them could have created alone. A partnership forged in crisis, strengthened by trust, and sealed with the kind of love that came from truly seeing each other. As the song ended and Dante kissed her under the twinkling lights, Emma knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not the safe choice, not the practical choice, but the right one. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is open your heart, and sometimes that danger leads you exactly where you need to be.